June 22nd, 1943, late morning over western Germany. 10,000 meters up, the sky is crowded with metal. Ahead, the main bomber stream of the 8th Air Force is already starting to turn west, away from the Ruhr, and the flak bursts hanging like dirty cotton. The IG Farben synthetic rubber plant at Hüls has just taken its pounding. Bomb bay doors are closing, formations are tightening. The race back to England has begun, all except for one airplane. At the very back, a single B-17 is struggling to stay in step. At first glance, it looks like any other flying fortress. Get closer, and the differences jump out. A powered chin turret stares straight ahead beneath the nose. Another turret bulges from the spine. Twin guns jut from both waist windows. Almost every opening in the fuselage glitters with .50 caliber barrels. Painted on the nose in looping letters is the name, Wango Wango. Inside, First Lieutenant Andrew G. Billick feels the airframe shudder as he coaxes for a little more power from the 4 right engines. "They're pulling away," his co-pilot mutters, watching the formation ahead inch forward. Billick knows it's not just flak damage, it's the airplane itself. Wango Wango isn't a standard B-17, it's a YB-40 gunship, an experiment. No bombs, no payload to drop. The bomb bay is stacked floor to ceiling with ammunition. Armor plating lines the crew positions. With 16 heavy guns and over 10,000 rounds on board, the crew joke they're flying a battleship with wings. Right now, the joke isn't funny. Up ahead, the other fortresses look suddenly lighter, livelier. Freed of their bombs, they start to climb and edge ahead. Wango Wango, still burdened with guns, armor, and ammo, can't match them. A gap opens, slowly at first, then obviously. Far below, in German fighter country, radar operators are watching the blips drift west. Jagdgeschwader controllers talk calmly over radios. On one edge of the returning bomber stream, a single echo begins to lag behind. To a fighter pilot sitting in the cockpit of an FW-190, that's not just a blip, that's an opportunity. This was the concept that was supposed to make B-17s untouchable. Pack one fortress with so many guns that anything with a black cross would think twice about coming close. Now the untouchable gunship is the one falling behind, and the hunters are starting to notice. To understand why anyone thought a flying gunship like Wango Wango was a good idea, you have to go back to the theory that put American bombers over Germany at all. From the beginning, the U.S. Army Air Forces believed in daylight precision bombing. Tight formations of heavily armed bombers would cross enemy territory in broad daylight, hit specific factories, refineries, and rail yards, and cripple the enemy's ability to make war. Destroy the gears of the war machine, not just burn cities. At the heart of that plan stood the Boeing B-17. The B-17F bristled with up to 13 .50 caliber machine guns, tail, top turret, ball turret under the belly, waist guns, cheek guns near the nose. It was wrapped in aluminum and stories, fortresses limping home on 3 engines or 2, with chunks of wing and tail missing, crews swearing they could see daylight through the fuselage. Posters and newsreels sold the image hard, big, rugged fortresses fighting through anything the Luftwaffe could throw at them. By early 1943, the fine print was obvious. The 8th Air Force was still relatively new in England. Groups like the 92nd Bomb Group at RAF Alconbury were just starting to push into occupied Europe in strength. At first, targets were coastal and relatively close. Sub-pens, shipyards, ports in France and along the North Sea. Even there, losses hurt. Every bomber crewman knew the magic number: 25 missions for a full tour. Survive 25, and you went home. By mid-1943, everyone also knew the ugly rumor. Your chances of actually finishing that tour were terrible. Some said you had a better chance of dying than reaching mission 25. Part of the problem was range. American fighters like the P-47 Thunderbolt could escort the bombers only so far. They turned back near the edge of their range long before the formations reached deep targets in the Ruhr or beyond. After that, B-17s flew on alone, straight and level, at fixed altitudes and headings like giant metal targets in the sky. On paper, overlapping fields of fire from dozens of fortresses should protect them. A combat box of bombers, each bristling with guns, was supposed to be a death trap for German fighters. The Luftwaffe adapted. Instead of creeping up from behind, fighters came head-on, using high closing speeds to slash past before gunners could get a steady bead. Bf-109s and FW-190s dove out of the sun toward the nose, firing cannon shells at pilots and cockpit glass, then broke away and climbed back. Others attacked from high front quarter or swung in from above and ahead, outside the densest arcs of fire, coordinating in groups, some drawing attention, others slipping into weaker angles. Bomber crews felt the difference. Instead of scattered attacks, they faced organized waves working like a pack. Fortresses still killed fighters, but losses on the American side climbed with every deeper raid. In planning rooms back in England, a painful question began to circulate. If our fighters can't escort the bombers all the way, can some bombers escort the others themselves? That's where the strange idea of a 16-gun super fortress began, and how Wango Wango and her crew ended up inside a giant experiment. On thin tracing paper in offices back in the States, engineers and officers sketched something radical. Take a standard B-17F, strip out the bombs, and turn it into a pure gunship. No payload, just teeth. The result was the YB-40. Under the nose, they added a powered Bendix chin turret with twin 50s, glaring straight ahead where head-on attackers now came. Behind the cockpit, an extra top turret went in. Inside the fuselage, the waist guns were doubled, 2 guns per side instead of 1. Armor plates were added under and around crew positions. Ammunition belts would snake through the aircraft like metal veins. Where bombs once hung, the bay would hold ammo cans, 11,000 rounds of .50 caliber. On paper, it was beautiful, a fortress among fortresses. On the ramp at RAF Alconbury, it was something else. Crews in the 92nd noticed the difference immediately. The gunship sat heavy on its landing gear, like it had sunk into the concrete. Fully loaded, it weighed thousands of pounds more than a standard B-17. Climbing to altitude took longer. Level speed was slower. It felt like a fully loaded moving truck trying to keep up with empty ones. Still, after what they'd been through, anything promising more firepower got attention. Into this experiment came First Lieutenant Andrew G. Billick and his crew. Billick in the left seat, a younger co-pilot beside him, navigator over charts, bombardier now mostly a forward gunner. Behind them, flight engineer, Chan top turret gunner, radio operator, 2 waist gunners, Ralph Kessling and Bob Pierce, a ball turret gunner and tail gunner Wilf Godet, watching the world shrink behind. They named their YB-40 Wango Wango, painted the nose art, and got used to the idea that if German fighters came, their airplane would be the one every eye picked out. On briefing boards, the concept was simple. The YB-40s would fly in the bomber stream, adding extra firepower. After bomb release, when standard B-17s were lighter and turning home, the gunships, still heavy with ammo, would stay with them all the way out, a rolling wall of guns on the retreat. That was the plan. The only way to test it was to take the gunships into combat and see who came back. Their first real taste of battle came May 29th, 1943, on a raid against the submarine pens at Saint-Nazaire. In the briefing room, the red line on the map ran from England to the Bay of Biscay and back. The operations officer pointed to YB-40 symbols mixed into the bomber boxes. "Gentlemen, you'll be getting some extra teeth today." Taxi and takeoff felt familiar until the throttles went forward. Wango Wango lumbered down the runway, slower to build speed, engines straining harder. Bilek hauled back on the yoke and felt the weight as the Fortress clawed into the gray English sky. Forming up took longer. Climbing to altitude felt like a wrestling match. Over France, flak blossomed. A few German fighters probed the formation. The gunship's turrets tracked, ready. There were some attacks and bursts of fire, but no full-on massacre. The pens got their bombs. The group turned for home. That's when the flaw showed. As regular B-17s dropped their bombs, they lightened and began to edge ahead. YB-40s, still burdened with ammunition and armor, struggled to hold position. The gap grew. They could keep up today, but only just. Back at Alconbury, in debrief, that unease was real. If the formation had been under heavier attack on the way out, and the gunships had fallen further behind, there was no time to dwell on it. The war rolled on. The gunships flew again to places like Le Mans, trading fire with FW-190s, claiming some kills and damaged fighters. The concept wasn't a total dud, but it wasn't a miracle either. Then came June 22nd, 1943. New briefing, new target, the IG Farben Hüls, synthetic rubber plant deep in the Ruhr. 11 YB-40s would join the raid. If the gunship idea could work anywhere, it had to work here, over the heart of German defenses. Crossing the target, everything felt almost routine. Bomb doors opened, not for bombs on Wango Wango, but to spill window tinfoil to confuse radar. Below, the Ruhr was lost in haze. Flak bursts were the only depth markers. The bomber stream held steady, a long spine of aluminum across the sky. Then the flak found them. A brutal bang shook the aircraft. The nose lurched, then snapped back. Interphone exploded with voices. "Hit on the left, engine 1's smoking. 4's gone rough." Out the window, engine number 1 trailed a dirty plume. On the same wing, another engine coughed, sputtered, and began to windmill. 2 engines on the same side. The nightmare scenario. The Fortress yawed violently toward the dead power. Bilek and his co-pilot stomped the rudder and fought the controls. They leveled her out. Barely. "Can you hold formation?" someone asked. Bilek could see the answer. Ahead, the other B-17s, now lighter after bombing, were edging away. Wango Wango, still loaded with armor and over 10,000 rounds, was suddenly racing sprinters with a weight vest on. "Do what you can," he said. "Stay with them as long as possible." For a few minutes they managed. The main formation stayed close enough that overlapping fire still helped. Then 50 yards became 100. 100 became 2. The bomber stream became a wall, then a line, then a distant cluster. Wango Wango was alone, in German fighter country. Near Pont and Geldern, a German controller watched his plotting table. One main formation heading west, one cripple trailing. He picked up the phone. Soon a line of FW-190s climbed toward the contrails. In the tail, Wilf Godet saw them first, tiny black dots swelling fast. "Bandits, 6 o'clock, low, closing," he called. The ship bristled. Kesling and Pierce at the waist swung their twin 50s. The ball turret spun. The top turret whined. Up front, the chin turret locked on. The first pass came from below and behind. Tracers lashed both ways. Godet fired, his guns hammered, brass piling around his boots. An FW-190 jerked off its attack line, smoke curling from its wing root. Cheers crackled over interphone, then cut off as the Germans shifted tactics. Now they came from high front quarter, from above and ahead, where some of the extra YB-40 guns mattered less. Every pass forced Bielik to hold course longer than he wanted. With 2 engines out, he couldn't jink and dive like a healthy fortress. One FW-190, flown by Bernhard Kunze, committed to a close, head-on run. The sky in front of the cockpit filled with a dark, growing shape. Here he comes! The world turned white and orange. Cannon shells ripped through nose and fuselage. Glass exploded inward. Something smashed into Bielik's shoulder. The yoke jumped as control cables parted. On the right wing, fuel lines ruptured. Engines flared. Flame licked back. "Fire on the right! She's going! She's going!" For a heartbeat, no one wanted to say it. Then a flat, calm voice, maybe Bielik's, maybe the co-pilot's, cut through. "Prepare to bail out. Get out, get out, get out." The drill they'd practiced suddenly meant survival. The ball turret gunner cranked himself up and out. Waist gunners unclipped, kicked spare ammo aside, and moved to the hatches. The radio operator checked the tail, then followed. One by one, they stepped into roaring wind and vanished. Bielik was among the last. He glanced once at the wrecked cockpit, smoking instruments, dead throttles, then jumped. His chute snapped open. The roar of the airplane vanished, replaced by thin wind and the creak of harness straps. Below, green fields and villages spun into focus. Off to one side, he saw other white canopies, his crew, drifting down like dandelion seeds. Far away, a dark column of smoke marked where Wango Wango hit the ground. The flying gunship that was supposed to make bombers untouchable became wreckage in a German field. All 10 men survived the fall. None made it back to England. They joined the long line of 8th Air Force POWs behind barbed wire, waiting for the war to end. News of Wango Wangos. Loss reached Alconbury quietly. An empty slot on the mission board, a crew missing from the Chow line. A short report. The gunship went down near Pont. Parachutes were seen. The crew presumed captured. On paper, Wango Wango was just one line in a thin YB-40 file. Evaluators saw a mixed picture. Gunships had flown roughly 60 sorties. Crews claimed several German fighters destroyed and damaged, and their heavy fire had sometimes discouraged attacks. But the verdict was clear. Too heavy, too slow to climb and maneuver. Unable to stay with standard B-17s after bomb release. Exactly when escort bombers were supposed to protect the others, they fell behind. As an operational solution, the concept had failed. But the failure left fingerprints. The chin turret that proved so useful against head-on attacks became standard on later B-17G models. Waist gun positions were staggered so gunners didn't collide. Mounts and sight lines were improved. Armor layouts were refined. At the same time, another answer was emerging. Long-range fighters like the P-51 Mustang and drop-tank-equipped P-47s, able to ride shotgun all the way to the target and back. They would do, with speed and flexibility, what the YB-40 could never quite manage. By late summer 1943, the remaining gunships were quietly pulled from combat. Some went home as training aircraft or test beds. Eventually, they were cut up for scrap. No YB-40 survives in a museum. The most heavily armed fortresses ever built live on only in photos, logbooks, and stories. The idea of a flying gunship didn't die. 2 decades later, over Vietnam, side-firing gunships like the AC-47 and AC-130 circled battlefields, bristling with weapons and pouring fire down in support of troops. Different war, different mission, but the echo was there. A reminder that even failed ideas shape what comes next. Picture that German sky one last time, a shining river of bombers heading home, and one strange, overarmed fortress slipping behind, fighting alone until there's nothing left to give. Most people know the B-17. Almost nobody remembers the YB-40s, or the men who flew into harm's way to test an idea that didn't quite work, but still changed the shape of the air war. This story is built on real missions, crews, and aircraft, with some cockpit moments dramatized to put you there. For deeper research, always go to professional historians and primary sources. If you want more forgotten World War II stories like this, hidden projects, failed experiments, and odd machines that still left their mark, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you're watching from and what you'd like us to cover next.